Okay, Robin Hood. We finished the book now. I'm in the appendix. Robin Hood and the Ballads. Of the life of the real Robin Hood, little is known, although much careful scholarship has been devoted to the study about this popular hero. Anyone wishing to acquaint himself with the scholarly work that's been done should consult two monumental works dealing with this subject. They are Robin Hood, a collection of all the ancient poems, songs, and ballads, now extant relative to that celebrated English outlaw by Joseph Ritson, published by John C. Nemo, London. The other is A Little Guest of Robin Hood, a little Guest of Robin Hood, edited by John Matthew Gooch, FSA, and published by the Longman, Brown, Green and Longmans, London. The following quotation is from the abridgment of Ritson's Life of Robin Hood, also given by Gooch. Robin Hood was born at Locksley, in the county of Nottingham, in the reign of King Henry II, and about the year of Christ 1160. His extraction was noble, and his true name Robert Fitzooth, which vulgar pronunciation easily corrupted into Robin Hood, he is frequently styled and commonly reputed to have been Earl of Huntingdon, a title which in the latter part of his life at least he actually appears to have had some sort of pretension. In his youth he is reported to have been of a wild and extravagant disposition, insomuch that his inheritance being consumed or forfeited by his excesses, and his person outlawed for debt, either from necessity or choice, he sought an asylum in the woods and forests, with which immense tracts, especially in the northern parts of the kingdom, were at that time covered. Of these he chiefly affected Barnesdale in Yorkshire, Sherwood in Nottinghamshire, and according to some, Plumpton Park in Cumberland. Here he either found or was afterwards joined by a number of persons in similar circumstances, such as the fury of ungoverned youth, thrust from the company of lawful men, who appear to have considered and obeyed him as their chief or leader, and of whom his principal favorites, or those in whose courage and fidelity he most confided, were Little John, whose surname is said to have been Naylor, William Scathlock, or Scarlet, as Will Scarlet, George A. Green, Pender, or Poundkeeper, of Wakefield, Much a miller's son, and a certain monk or friar named Tuck. He likewise is said to have been accompanied in his retreat by a female of whom he was enamored, and whose real or adopted name was Marian. His company, in process of time, consisted of 100 archers, men, says Major, most skillful in battle, whom 4 times that number of the boldest fellows durst not attack. His manner of recruiting was somewhat singular, for in the words of an old writer, whatsoever he heard of any that were of unusual strength and hardiness, he would disguise himself, and rather than fail, go like a beggar to become acquainted with them, and after he had tried them with fighting, never give them over till he had used means to draw them in, to live after his fashion, a practice of which numerous instances are recorded in the more common and popular songs, where indeed he seldom fails to receive a sound beating in shooting with the longbow, which they chiefly practiced. They excelled all the men in the land, though, as occasion required, they had also other weapons. In these forests and with this company, he for many years reigned, like an independent sovereign, at perpetual war, indeed, with the King of England and all his subjects, with an exception, however, of the poor and needy, and such as were desolate and oppressed, or stood in need of protection. When molested by a superior force in one place, he retired to another, still defying the power of what was called the law and government, and making his enemies pay dearly, as well as for their open attacks, as for their clandestine treachery. It is not the same time to be concluded that he must in this opposition have been guilty of manifest treason or rebellion, as he most certainly can be justly charged with neither. An outlaw in those times, being deprived of protection, owed no allegiance. His hand was against every man, and every man's hand against him. These forests, in short, were his territories, those who accompanied and adhered to him, his subjects. The world was not his friend, nor the world's law. And what better title King Richard could it pretend to the territory and people of England than Robin Hood had to the dominion of Barnesdale or Sherwood, is a question humbly submitted to the consideration of the political philosopher. The deer with which the royal forests then abounded, every Norman tyrant being, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord, would afford our hero and his companions an ample supply of food throughout the year, and of fuel for dressing their venison or other purposes of life. They could evidently be in no want. The rest of their necessaries would be easily procured, partly by taking what they had occasion for from the wealthy passenger who traversed or approached their territories, and partly by commerce with the neighboring villages or great towns. It may be readily imagined that such a life, during great part of the year at least, and while it continued, free from the alarms and apprehensions to which our foresters, one would suppose, must have been too frequently subject, might be sufficiently pleasant and desirable, and even deserve the compliment which is paid to it by Shakespeare in his comedy of As You Like It, Act 1, Scene 1, where on Oliver's asking, "Where will the old Duke live?" Charles answers, They say he is already in the forest of Arden, and a many merry men with him, and there they live like the old Robin Hood of England, and fleet the time carelessly as they did in the Golden World. But it is to be remembered, according to the confession of the latter historian, that in these exertions of power he took away the goods of rich men, only never killing any person, unless he was attacked or resisted, that he would not suffer a woman to be maltreated, nor ever took anything from the poor, but charitably fed them with the wealth he drew from the abbots. I disapprove, says he, of the rapine of the man, but he was the most humane and the prince of all robbers. An allusion, no doubt, to this irregular and predatory course of life. He has had the honor to be compared to the illustrious Wallace, deliverer of his country. Oh, like from Scotland, right? William Wallace, Braveheart, deliverer of his country, and that it is not a little remarkable in the latter's own time. Having for a long series of years maintained a sort of independent sovereignty and set kings, judges, and magistrates at defiance, a proclamation was published offering a considerable reward for bringing him either dead or alive, which, however, seems to have been productive of no greater success than the former attempts for that purpose. At length the infirmities of old age increasing upon him, and desirous to be relieved in a fit of sickness by letting blood, he applied for that purpose to the prioress of the Kirkleys nunnery in Yorkshire, his relation. Women, particularly religious women, being in those times somewhat better skilled in surgery than the sexes at present, by whom he was treacherously suffered to bleed to death. This event happened on the 18th of November, 1247, being the 31st year of King Henry III, and if the date assigned to his birth be correct, about the 87th of his age. He was interred under some trees in a short distance from the house, a stone being placed over his grave with an inscription to his memory. Robin Hood undoubtedly stands as a representative of the rude time when popular rights, as we know them now, had little recognition. Scott, in his Ivanhoe, makes him representative of the Saxon race, at the time when it was under the oppression of the conquering Normans. In the days when the Norman conquerors held their land from the king, and the peasants or villages were attached to the soil, of the burdens of the common people were grievous to hear. If a thrall ran away from his master and endeavored to secure employment elsewhere, he was looked upon as a criminal, to be brought back and punished with the whip or the branding iron, or to cast in prison. The great forest afforded a natural refuge to the better spirits of whom Robin Hood may well stand as a type. Living an independent life with a price upon their heads, they were able to make use of their knowledge of woodcraft and their skill with the rude weapons of the time. Thus they were often able to set at defiance the assumed forces of their oppressors. Like other ballads, those of Robin Hood owe their preservation largely to oral tradition. Thus they are often extravagant in statement and frequently vary greatly in their recital of facts. They afford, however, most charming pictures of a rude stage of civilization and of the periods and standards from which our own social sanctions have developed. After the introductions of printing, these ballads were hawked about the country by chapmen or by cheapmen in many different forms. The industry of such scholars as Mr. Ritson has reduced this valuable body of literature concerning Robin Hood to 40 ballads. From these, many editions of stories about this popular hero have been evolved. The following is given as an illustration of the ballads, telling a story of Allen a Dale, as it is given in the text. Robin Hood and Allen a Dale. Or, a pleasant relation, how a young gentleman, being in love with a young damsel, she was taken from him to be an old knight's bride, and how Robin Hood, pitying the young man's case, took her from the old knight when they were going to be married, and restored her to her own love again. To a pleasant northern tune, Robin Hood in the greenwood stood. I don't know the tune, so I'm not going to sing it. I might feel like it, but I'm just going to read it. Okay, bold Robin Hood, he did the young man right, and took the damsel from the doting knight. That's from an old black letter copy in Major Pearson's collection. Okay, come listen to me, you gallants so free, all you that love mirth for to hear, and I will tell you of a bold outlaw that lived in Nottinghamshire. As Robin Hood in the forest stood, all under the greenwood tree, there he was aware of a brave young man, as fine might be. The youngster was clothed in scarlet red, and scarlet fine and gay, and he did frisk it over the plain, enchanted around the lay. As Robin Hood next morning stood amongst the leaves so gay, there did he espy the same young man come drooping along the way. The scarlet he wore the day before, it was clean cast away, and at every step he fetched a sigh, alack, and well a day. Then stepped forth brave Little John and Midge, the miller's son. Or Much the miller's son, right? Midge the miller's son. Which made the young man bent his bow, when as he see them come. Stand off, the young man said. What is your will with me? You must come before our master straight under yon greenwood tree. And when he came bold Robin before, Robin asked him courteously, O, hast thou any money to spare for my merry men and me? I have no money, the young man said, but 5 shillings and a ring, and that I have kept this 7 long years to have it at my wedding. Yesterday I should have married a maid, but she from me was ta'en, and chosen to be an old knight's delight, whereby my poor heart is slain. What is thy name, then? Said Robin Hood. Come tell me without any fail. By the faith of my body, then said the young man, my name is Allen a Dale. What wilt thou give me, said Robin Hood, in ready gold or fee, to help thee to thy true love again, and deliver her unto thee? I have no money, then, quoth the young man, no ready gold nor fee, but I will swear upon a book thy true servant for to be. How many miles is it to thy true love? Come, tell me without guile. By the faith of my body, then, said the young man, it is but 5 little mile. Then Robin he hastened over the plain. He did neither stint nor lin, until he came unto the church where Allen should keep his wedding. What hast thou here? The bishop then said. I pray thee now, tell unto me. I am a bold harper, quoth Robin Hood, and the best in the north country. O welcome, the bishop he said. Thy music best pleaseth me. You shall have no music, quoth Robin Hood, till the bride and bridegroom I see. With that came in a wealthy knight, which was both grave and old, and after him a finikin lass did shine like the glistening gold. This is not a fit match, called bold Robin Hood, that you do seem to make here. For since we are come into the church, the bride shall choose, I fear. Then Robin Hood put his horn to his mouth and blew blasts 2 or 3, when 24 bowmen bold came leaping over the lea. And when they came into the churchyard, marching all in a row, the first man was Allen a Dale, to give bold Robin his bow. This is thy true love, Robin, he said, young Allen, as I hear say, and you shall be married at this same time before we depart away. That shall not be, the bishop said, for thy word shall not stand. It shall be 3 times asked in the church, as is the law of our land. Robin Hood pulled off the bishop's coat and put it on Little John. By the faith of my body, then Robin said, this cloth doth make thee a man. When Little John went into the choir, the people began to laugh. He asked them 7 times in the church, lest 3 times should not be enough. Who gives me this maid? Said Little John. Quoth Robin Hood, that do I, and he that takes her from Allen a Dale, fully dearly he shall buy. And thus having ended this merry wedding, the bride looked like a queen, and so they returned to the merry green wood, amongst the leaves so green. The end.